liberty, and justice for all.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Grepp, for being here and beginning our meeting with prayer. And also, it's always a privilege to be able to do the Pledge of Allegiance as well. Madam Clerk, if you'd please call the roll.
Counselor Doty?
Here.
Counselor Staudick?
Here.
Counselor Register?
Here.
Counselor Dittenberg?
Here.
Counselor Allgood?
Here.
Counselor Williams?
Here.
Very good. All council members are present and accounted for. So are there any conflict of interest declarations for any council members regarding an item on the agenda this evening? Okay, and I do not believe we have any special presentations tonight. Debbie, you're so far away,
I know.
which she probably loves. So, yes.
Sorry, can I, just curious, we do have an item coming up under new business for VRT. Is that a conflict of interest for you? Should that be declared?
So I would say no. The attorney can correct me on that. So I am the chair of Valley Regional Transit. However, I'm not paid to be the chair on that. So there's no monetary interest, anything of that nature. And typically that's where that conflict of interest comes in, if you have a monetary gain one way or the other in regards to that. Taylor?
Mayor and council, thank you. So I would agree with the mayor. The conflict of interest arises when there is a financial gain associated with the voting member or their family. So that is where the conflict of interest would arise. Thanks.
Very good, excellent. I appreciate that question though, and so hopefully I won't have to worry about it. So the only way I have to vote is if it's a tie, so I guess we'll see when we get there. But thank you for bringing that up though. It's always great, it's always pertinent to ask questions, especially when it has things to do with that nature, so. Okay, so we do not have any special presentations, so that moves us into audience participation. We do have only one individual signed up. Real quick too, before I forget, I noticed that we do have a couple of our team members, Cushing Terrell that is here. I want to give them a huge shout out. They're a big part of this building, the design, implementation, and all of that. Kreisenbeck was the constructor on it, and Cushing Terrell had a big lead on its architecture and the design and everything. So I want to just tell them thank you. It's great to have you here tonight and all the work and effort you put in to make this building so beautiful and so functional as well. It's a huge improvement, so thank you so much for that. So to Gary and to Angela for what you did, so thank you. Okay, as mentioned, we only do have one person signed up for audience participation, and that is Sue Cushland. It's if you could limit your comments to 3 minutes. And we do have a clock, which is nice, right up there. And then I got one right there so I can watch it too.
It'll be lucky to be 2 minutes. Mayor and council, I attended the budget hearing on 5:30, and there are a couple of issues that I think need to be addressed. I'm sure you all got my emails, and I've addressed a lot. First, when Ken was asked to comment on a line item cut, he had no idea that that had happened. He was not included in the decision to cut that item from his budget. Whoever cut the item should have a discussion with him. He should be included in any line item adjustments to his budget. He is the professional. He knows what it takes to maintain the golf course. And I think it's a disservice not to include him in the decision-making process. Second, there's a lot of discussion about Brett not having a PGA card. Julie McCoy admitted his job description had changed since his hiring. I believe the term she used was morphed. That his job duties kind of moved away from just being a pro. That being said, I think the city needs to take some responsibility in not updating his job description as his job duties changed. As his duties changed to more managerial, so should his job description have reflected that change. The managerial duties were far more important to the city than a PGA card. Brett has stepped up to the plate and done all of the changes required of him and done them brilliantly. I just felt like he wasn't totally respected when approached at the budget hearing. It's the first one I'd ever gone to, and I was horrified, as you all know by the email you received from me. That's all I have. Any questions?
Okay, yeah, thank you so much, and yeah, I'll look into that, and regarding that question about the line item that was cut without Ken's knowledge. He has obviously an integral part out there in maintaining the course, and as you know, a golf course can change from one day to the next if you're not taking care of it. And then it takes weeks to get it back, if not months on that. So yes, we definitely will look into that, and I appreciate you bringing that to our attention.
And I feel like the city hired 2 professionals to do the job that they're doing. And I might be the only one in the room that has had any golf course experience on maintenance and pro shop and bookkeeping. I've done it my whole life. And they need to be treated like professionals, just like you treat the lawyer. You don't tell her how to do her job. Personal opinion. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, appreciate it, Sue. Okay, as mentioned, Sue is the only one that was signed up under audience participation. Is there anyone else in the audience that was wanting to speak? Did it not? Okay, very good. That then moves us to our consent calendar. I do not believe we have any amendments to the consent calendar. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
Correct.
Okay. Do we have a motion for approval of the consent calendar?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
We have a motion from Councilor Doty and a second from Councilor Stoddard for approval of the consent calendar. Madam Clerk, or do we have we do have the voting up, so the voting is open at this time. And we tested it to try to make sure it worked better. I think we got it fixed. Looks like so far so good. So all votes are cast and that has passed unanimously. So that moves us into old business, and this is, so old business action item number 1 is consider resolution approving a modification to resolution 369-23 to allow 3-hour free parking privileges in downtown Caldwell for vehicles with DMV issued veteran plates. And I'm trying to remember who presented on this last.
City attorney.
Do you mind just touching on, I think we all know where it is and we've discussed it, if you don't mind just touching on it really briefly.
I can. Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a reflection of the discussion from 2 weeks prior about this resolution. I believe that we incorporated all the discussions from that meeting, and the resolution you have in front of you today should be reflective of those conversations. So I'd be happy to answer any questions we have on that. Thank you.
Okay, yes, thank you so much. Any questions for, and remember that you do have, so when you want to speak, just push your button, your mic will go green, and then I'll know that you want to talk. So, I was about to count on you. Okay, so any questions for, yes, Councilor Register.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Oh, okay, yes, go right ahead.
I move that we accept the resolution approving a modification to Resolution 369-23 to allow 3-hour free parking privileges downtown Caldwell for vehicles with Idaho DMV issued veteran plates.
Very good. Do we have a second? Second. So we have a motion from, I think Councilor Doty beat you to it, if I'm not mistaken. So a motion from Councilor Register with a second from Councilor Doty and a close third from Councilor Allgood on that. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, with that, then the voting is open at this time. And all votes are cast, so voting is closed, and that passes unanimously as well. And that moves us into new business. So action item number 1 is consider resolution authorizing the use of contingency funds for repayment of CDBG funds. And if you remember, this was also discussed at the last council meeting, if I remember. And so this is a repayment in regards to the cancellation of the Arthur Street project. So, Raylyn, it's all you.
Good afternoon, City Council. Before you is the resolution for the repayment of the CDBG funds with the cancellation of the Arthur project. The total is $106,875.98, and that is for the design that in the final payment that came through. We asked for a final invoice, and that is the total. I know I told you a different amount last City Council, but this is the final payment. So.
Very good. Any questions for Raylyn? Councilor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what was the difference? It's a significant difference. It's not a small difference. It's over $20,000, as I recall. What is the difference?
So usually they have, it's just the work that they did and up until that date. And so they do monthly billings, and we had not received that monthly billing at that point in time. So we will ask for the final invoice that was the final invoice that essentially paid for all the hours that they had accumulated up until then.
Okay, other questions? Oh, yes, Counselor Allgood.
Raylan, so we're paying this back for work that was already done. In the future, will that money come back available for a new project?
Yes, yes, so that money will come back to CDBG. It does take a little bit of time, so essentially we have to repay the Treasury, the federal department, the federal government, and then they will reallocate those funds back to us as freed up funds in the CDBG allocation. It just does take some time and some process. And then once the two projects that we've been discussing to use on these funds, and it's a great time as ever to get your guys the nod of yes, is some upgrades at Lions Park with a pathway and maybe a berm, and then a roof for the domestic violence shelter.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, very good. Do we have any motions regarding this resolution? Counselor Allgood.
I move that we approve this payment.
Very good. Do we have a second?
Second?
So we have a motion from Counselor Allgood and a second from Counselor Doty for approval of this resolution authorizing the payment of $106,900 regarding the Arthur Street project cancellation. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, with that, the voting is open. And all votes are cast. The voting is closed. And that motion passes unanimously as well. That moves us into new business action item number 2, and this is a resolution authorizing the reimbursement of costs in the amount of $65,574.21 associated with the cancellation of routes 56 and 58 with Valley Regional Transit. Mr. Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. So this item is Valley Regional Transit asking for reimbursement of costs they incurred in the amount of $65,000 and change. So in last October 2023, the council appropriated an amount of up to $645,000 in the 2024 budget for Caldwell's contribution to VRT. That amount included $345,000 as a base amount to continue the existing routes in the city, and an additional $300,000 for two potential new routes of $150,000 each. VRT moved forward with the assumption that the additional $300,000 was approved for these new routes. And in doing so, they ordered new signs and hardware for the bus stops, cost of about $6,300. And they decided that until the new routes could come online, they would expand the service of Route 150, which is the on-demand route where people call up and get picked up the next day to go to a hospital or whatever medical appointment. So from the time of October until April, they added 10.25 extra hours a day to Route 150, the on-demand route, at a cost of about $59,000. Then fast forwarding to April 2nd of this year, the council decided to only approve the base amount of $345,000 and not the additional $300,000. At that point, Valley Regional Transit suspended the extra hours of service on 150. And anyway, as a result of that April 2nd decision, VRT is now requesting reimbursement for the signs that they purchased and the hardware that they can't use, and for the extra hours of service on Route 150. They feel they acted in good faith based on their budget appropriation last October. They're not asking for their staff hours that they spent planning the new routes, the stops, and the brochures they put together. I guess it really comes down to me, to three questions. One, did they move forward in good faith? I think they did. Number two, did they move forward with an agreement in writing? No, they did not. And number three, did they actually incur costs? Yes, they did. And that concludes my presentation.
Very good. Thank you so much. Any questions for Mr. Mills?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilor Stoddard.
I had an email from Mrs. Clegg, who's the CEO of VRT, And I believe, I should have brought it with me, but I believe the email was the first to the middle of February sometime this year. And I think she knew at that time that this thing wasn't going to get approved for 600 and some thousand dollars, whatever it is. But anyway, the email said that they only had spent $6,900 at that time. And when I saw the $65,000 figure, I about fell out of my chair. So, you know, I have a big problem with it. Really do. Thank you.
Yeah, any other oh yes, Councilor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I've got several real issues with this. And number one, you said it, they moved forward on an assumption. When we approve a budget is no guarantee of anything. We know that when we approve budgets, the budgets are working numbers for us. And unless and until this body authorizes that kind of disbursement, it's not done. It wasn't in writing. The fact that they made the decision to go ahead and spend money shouldn't be on us to reimburse them for that amount of money. And I'm even more concerned knowing that they had long heads up that this was coming when they hadn't spent this much money. If those on-demand hours were used, what would they have done with the on-demand hours anyway? They would have been serving somebody for something. Maybe not in our city. Maybe they reallocated those hours somewhere else. But from the very beginning, this thing was alarming to us. And it was appropriate for, I believe it was Councilman Stoddard, to bring up the question when he did. And so I'm not inclined in any way to be responsible for their assumption to move ahead with them spending money and then expecting us to pay them back for it.
Any other questions or? Oh, did you have another comment? Go
Yeah,
ahead,
I was just going to say, dovetailing what Councilman Williams, I don't have any problem with the $6,900 because, I mean, that was fine up until that middle of February date, but after that, they knew that this thing wasn't going well and that it would probably not be approved. And I have a major problem with approving anything over that $6,900 figure. So, thank you.
Councilor Williams?
So then I have a question, how does budget work? If we budget for something but then never actually appropriate that money, who else can make assumptions and spend money, and will we be on the hook for that? I don't like the precedent that it sets.
Councilor Register.
I also agree with all the comments, but I agree with Counselor Williams that when we make the budget, we are doing that to know what numbers that we have to work with. It doesn't give anybody the go ahead and spend that before we approve that spending. And I agree that if we even give the $6,900, we are setting that precedence that if you're in the budget, you can spend the money, and we can't. That could lead to a much bigger problem down the road. So.
Councilor Stoddard?
Yeah, my only concern about the 6,900, whether it's close to that, I know I need to dig out the email, but if somebody from the city gave them the impression that this thing was going to improve, that's why I said I don't have a problem with the 6,900. But if nobody from the city gave them that impression that was going to improve, then I would have the problem with the 6,900. But from talking with Mrs. Clegg, it seems like that they had some impression from somebody that it was okay and this thing's going to move forward. So, up until February.
Yeah, and I think, and Councilor Denberg, get right to you in a second. I think the impression was just that the budget was approved for it. And so there's numerous items, and I agree that they did try to come forward. I think it was in October, and that was when there was those questions that came up, and so it was delayed later on. So the assumption I think was given is with the budget approval. That budget request came in, they requested the $600,000. That was approved by council. So I believe that was the assumption that this has been approved, so move forward in that regard, rather than, not approving that budget line item at that time during the budget hearings. So that would have been my imagination. Imagining that's the assumption they would have took to say, okay, this has been approved as the budget, even though they didn't get the resolution part of it. That was the assumption they probably went under to move forward with it. Would be, again, and that's my assumption. on it. Counselor Dittenberg?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I really don't have any problem reimbursing Valley Regional Transit for the amount that they've asked for. Just because they probably did act in good faith, they probably did incur those costs. But we now bring up another subject, and I would encourage the chief not to hire any officers just because we've approved the budget until you get something in writing. If that's the most direction we're going, we do a lot of things about giving people the impression, giving people the go-ahead, whether or not it's specifically written or whether or not it's tacit approval. I'm okay either way. I mean, it's obviously the decision of the council, but I think Valley Regional Transit probably did act in good faith. They probably did act in the best interest of the city. I don't think they did anything underhanded or untoward. They just looked at it and went, okay, how do we get what money we put back into it, knowing that the city's not going to go forward with it. So I don't have any problem authorizing the expense.
Okay, and Bruce, you could probably sit down, because I think it's more discussion in the comments. We won't make you stand there any longer than you have to. Councilor Register?
Yeah, so just in response to what Councilor Dittenberg said, certainly there has to be a different process between using the money in-house and out, is that correct? So I think when we set a budget, it doesn't give the police chief or the fire chief a checkbook that he just goes out and starts writing checks. He must have to go through a process to actually use it. But before you answer that, the problem with where was I going with this? I had a whole thought. When we approve a budget, if something changes between October and whenever somebody comes forward to approve an expenditure, and we've had an emergency or we've had some kind of tragedy when we've had to reallocate money or spend it, we cannot lock ourselves into saying, well, we approved it in the budget, so just because we had a bridge fall down, now it doesn't matter, we're not going to do that because we're going to do this. So I don't think that when it comes to the budget that we should be looking at is a hard and fast number rather than a number that we're working with. But nobody should be going out and spending money that they haven't actually had an approval for an allocation in-house or out. But is the process different for in-house purchases versus an outside agency?
So, Council, Mayor, yes. So with in-house, especially with filling positions, there's still a cap. We have a budget on position numbers. We have a budget on pay as well. So there's a cap with that. And so just like with contracts, anything budgeted over 50,000 is required to come to City Council. Anything below 50,000 that's budgeted doesn't go to City Council, but you guys still sign off on it in the checks. If it's not budgeted at all, it is required to go to City Council. I will say in our budget, the amount that gets passed in ordinance is a total dollar amount by fund. So that is the only, it's the total dollar amount by fund that's passed. So the specific projects are not approved, even though they might be lined out in the budget. They're never approved until they come to City Council. So.
Any other questions, discussions, or motions? Councilor Allgood?
Yeah, I would agree with Councilor Stodic in that I have no issue paying the hard cost of the $6,900 and whatever dollar amount that is. Whether we like this situation or not, and I know it got kind of out of control, but Valley Regional Transit is a good partner with this city, and I would want to maintain that relationship best we can because they do provide a service to our citizens that is valuable.
Councilor Williams?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to make a motion that we deny the resolution as it is presented.
So that would be denying it in its entirety, correct? Not modifying it to include the 6,900?
That would be my motion.
Okay. So it is a motion for denying this is again action item number 2. So there's a motion, Councilor Williams, regarding this resolution for denial of the proposed payment. And I know that Councilor Dittenberg did have his light on for discussion. I don't think it's let me see if there's a second real quick. Is there a second to that motion?
A second.
Okay, so that's a second from Counselor Register. So that would open it up for discussion for that motion. Counselor Dittenberg?
I don't have anything different to add to the motion. I just think with regard to the process, with regards to what council votes on, it seems like a lot lately, and I'll just throw this out on the table, we're trying to back out of a lot of things we approved. We approved at one time the money for VRT, and now we're backing out. We approved the increase in the fees to include recycling, and now there's a question about, whether or not that was the right. And then, we also have on there the CDBG money for the trail. Somewhere along the line that was approved and we're backing out. I just think that we ought to consider what our word is worth in the effort of building goodwill for our community, in the effort of building goodwill to the people that we have good and long-standing relationships with. And you may all disagree, but that's just kind of my final thoughts on where I think we ought to place our focus in the future is measuring twice and cutting once. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that. So there is a motion on the table. Any further discussion on that motion, Counselor Register?
Can I just respond to what Counselor Dittmer said, or does it have to remain? I can bring it up in comments if you want.
So it should be focused on the motion.
Okay.
So,
Well, then I guess I don't have anything. I was going to suggest that maybe VRT bring back a modified request with their actual list or whatever they have to bring, receipts, for that initial amount that they were talking about, to make sure we have the right number.
okay. So, correct, I'm just trying to restate and make sure I understand. So you're kind of saying that you approve of this, of the motion to deny it all because you want them to come back with a more, rather than just guessing what that number is,
Correct.
with a more exact number of what it would be. Okay. Okay. Counselor Doty?
Same here, Mr. Mayor, and I think I'll probably vote no on this tonight because there is some debate of when emails when and what dates are on there, and I think without that present, both sides have argued well for their position, but I think if we're guessing on an email that's not here, let's get all the dates together, and let's, as Councilor Williams often says, we don't have all the stuff in front of us, so we're trying to make a decision from the hip, so tonight it's a no, but maybe we should measure twice and cut once before let's just figure out what's going on with it and what the date stamps are and the discussions that took place.
Counselor?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd be willing to find that email, I know I have it, and make a copy of it and send it to everybody, so.
Okay, sounds good. I wasn't sure if I had CC'd on it, so I was trying to see if I was. I didn't find any, and it was just a very quick search on my phone, so it may be there, but yeah, I wasn't able to find it, just so that's out there. Excuse me, Counselor Tittenberg.
One final comment, then I'll be quiet for the night. Just so I can get my digs in as the freshman council member on the board. I didn't vote for any of this stuff, and yet I'm stuck in the middle of it, so I'm done.
The buck has been passed. Appreciate that. Did you have another comment, Counselor Register? Okay. So with that, I think we have the discussion in. So the motion again, so just so you're aware, the motion is for denial of this resolution. So a green vote, yes vote means that you are saying yes to denying it. No vote means that you're saying no to the denial and you'd like to perhaps look at a new motion of approving it. So just so that's very clear. With that, the voting is open. All votes are cast. And that motion passes with 4 in favor and 2 in opposition. If there's any at home that can't see, so Councilman Allgood and Councilman Dittenberg voted against the motion, and the other 4 council members, Councilor Williams, Councilor Register, Sadek, and Councilor Doty voted in favor of the denial of the resolution. So that resolution is denied at this time, and we will obviously continue to work on that, find that information, and get that and bring that back before council. That moves us into action item number 3. This is another resolution. This is for authorizing the purchase of a mower in the amount of $68,482.72 from Turf Equipment for use by the Parks Department. Julie, time is yours.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. What this is for is, the proposal is to take a portion of our machinery line from last year that is a capital line that we use to get new equipment that we need. Last year, $278,787 was budgeted for different types of equipment, different pieces of equipment. And of that so far, we've only spent about $73,000. I kind of tend to pace those out a little bit through the year as we need things and need to buy the equipment. So that leaves us with $205,757 left in that account. So we're not asking for like a new amount or to add something to the budget. It's just a different purchase than what we had outlined in last year's budget. And the reason for that is, if you remember from my budget proposals, we're having some issues with our large area mowers. This will get us, so our mowers jump from ones that have about a 4-foot deck to ones that have like a 16-foot deck. The ones with a 16-foot deck, they are hard to come by, and typically it takes anywhere from a year to a year and a half to get one. This particular mower has a 12-foot deck and is available immediately, and it will also be a really nice piece of equipment to add to our fleet because it gives us something in between those. So it will be beneficial all the ways around. So I now stand for questions.
Good, thank you so much. Questions, Councilor Doty?
Mr. Mayor, thank you for the presentation. A couple of things. I did some research on these, and even though $68,000 seems like a lot of money for a lawnmower, it isn't.
It's a good deal.
So-
It's a really good deal.
So I just want to point that out, that everything now is just super expensive, but of course, the bigger they are, the higher the price, and it is a fair price, is all I would say, based on my research. Secondly, though, did you ask for a lawnmower in next year's budget as well?
I
And so
actually
what-
asked for 2 in next year's budget, because we really do need that equipment. The ones that we have are very, very old, and they're breaking down. And it's hard to find parts for them. The parts are extremely expensive. So this would add, not only would it benefit us now to have something larger to mow those areas, but it will also benefit us in the future in that we'll have something in between the smaller, what are called walker mowers that are about 3 or 4 feet wide, and the huge 16-foot mowers. So it'll be a really nice piece of equipment to have to be able to do our jobs more effectively.
Okay, Mr. Mayor?
Councilor
Hey,
Williams?
Mr.
Oh, sorry.
sorry. I just want one more follow-up.
Yeah,
though.
go ahead.
But, and that's great, because it sounds like the ones next year are even bigger than this one.
Correct,
Just to
yes.
make sure we're monitoring that. If we don't have people to drive them, we also don't want them sitting. So that's the
Yeah.
reason I was asking, to make sure that we don't, certainly we need to replace bad equipment, but we also don't need it sitting there if we don't have anyone that can
Yeah, and
operate
we,
it. So-
every year, because the majority of our mowing is done with the large winged mowers, because we have, I think, something about 400 acres that we have to mow, and most of it is big open spaces. We train people to do it every year, so we have a mow crew, and that's typically 3 to 4 people who go out, and that's pretty much all they do.
Sounds like a job for me in retirement. Just
I
drive
know.
around on a lawnmower.
I want to drive the big mower.
Councilor Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just closely to what I thought Councilor Doty was going to get there, but does this then replace one of those mowers that you requested? I don't know if that's what you were getting at. You requested 2. If we buy this one now, do we only need to allocate for 1 more in the new coming year's budget?
No, we would still need 2.
You would still need 2 more. So this is, in essence, a request for 3 lawnmowers.
If you want to put it that way, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, excellent, thank you so much.
Okay,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Okay, again, this is just a resolution for that, so if there are additional questions from council for the finance director or staff, it's always available, or any discussion or any motions are always appropriate at any time as well.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Doty?
I just want to say something before I make the motion. We certainly need to consider that in next year's budget, but for this year at this time and this price and what we've approved, I think the more is warranted, what's in front of us currently right now, and it is a fair price. So I'll make a motion that we approve the purchase of the lawnmower.
Very good, and Councilor?
Second.
So we have a motion from Councilor Doty and a second from Councilor Stoddick. This is for approval of this resolution authorizing the purchase of a mower in the amount of $68,482.72. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, with that, the voting is open. And all votings are cast, so voting is closed, and that motion passes unanimously. And that moves us into action item number 4. This is a housekeeping item for annexation to the irrigation district. So this is for bill number 44, ordinance number 3605. Bill number 45, ordinance number 3606, and Bill number 46, ordinance number 3607. And again, that is for annexing all three of these properties in the Caldwell Municipal Irrigation District, requesting to move for their passage. And in your motion, if you could include those bill and ordinance numbers, that'd be a.
I'm going to turn my mic back off because I was going to say so moved. I'll do it.
Counselor Doty?
I'll make a motion that we approve Bill number 44, ordinance number 3605. Bill number 45, ordinance number 3606. Bill number 46, ordinance 3607, with a request to move for their passage.
Very good. Do we have a second?
Second.
So that's a motion from Counselor Doty and a second from Counselor Stodic for approval of the bills and ordinances as listed. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, with that, the voting is open. And all votes are cast, voting is closed, and that passes unanimously. And just kind of going, typically, yeah, you probably could have, but where there's multiple of them in there, that's why I thought it may be good on that. So, but you probably would be good to just say to pass as well.
It was fine,
So,
Mr.
yeah.
Mayor.
Okay, that moves us into action item number 5, the finance report. Who drew the short straw this evening? So, yep.
Sorry. Mr. Mayor, I move that accounts payable in the amount of $3,865,156.36, represented by check numbers 178116 through 178464, and payroll for the amount of $678,754.78, represented by check numbers 39428 through 39448, and direct deposits to be accepted, payments approved, and vouchers filed in the office of the city clerk.
Very good. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
So a motion from Councilor Register, a second from Councilor Allgood for acceptance of the finance report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. That moves us into council comments. Councilor Doty.
I just have a couple with the upcoming budget. I certainly still want to consider the in-house attorney. I see that we got some numbers from Ray Lynn today. And I would strongly suggest that we move forward with that. I've had a conversation with Mr. Hilty at his law firm, and I think he may propose something as well. And so I look forward to seeing that, if he so chooses, and then that showing up on the agenda. The only other thing I have for tonight is with the budget proposal coming up, I don't know how many positions will be approved. There's talk that there's not much room at City Hall. I also would like council to strongly consider turning the gym temporarily into office space. I think our employees deserve it. I think they come first. The gym is a nicety for sure. And maybe when we get the third floor, but in the next year's budget, there's equipment for that, and I'm not so sure that we shouldn't be focused on our employees and giving them a great place to work. So other than that, I think this is the shortest one we've had in a while. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Very good. Councilor Stodic.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I wanted to compliment the chief. I hope it doesn't go to his head, but on his great diversity of different officers in different fields. I think it's going to make our city a lot safer, especially with those officers that come from other areas that are experienced in the field like they are, and I think overall it helps the whole police department. I really want to congratulate you on your selection. We appreciate it as far as taxpayers and our families and everything here at the city of Caldwell. Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just to comment on that.
Yeah.
Those ISP officers really help for sure. I know. It's,
Good. Councilor Register.
So I just want to say it's intimidating. This room is intimidating a little bit. Like, this is different. This does not feel so, I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to say what I have to say anyway. But a couple of things that I wanted to ask you, Mayor. Were you going to be updating the public on the fee that Councilor Williams brought up at the last meeting for the parking?
Like in a press release or?
No, just like in your comments.
Yeah, I can,
Okay.
for sure. So,
Just because he had brought up that there was a 55-cent transaction fee or whatever, so we want to clear up whatever came from that. And then I just had a couple of questions about some different things that I was hearing. Has the fire department decided where they are going to build their station, or have they been told they can't use City Hall, the old City Hall?
No, that is still, I think, yet to be determined. I think it'll ultimately be the council that decides that, if I'm not mistaken. Or how does that, Raylan, do you know, on regards to they would have to, well, I mean, kind of, they'd have to, because if they do go to the old city hall, this city council has to make that decision if they're
To
going to
sell
sell
the
it to
building,
them.
right?
Yep.
Okay.
Correct.
And then, I don't know exactly how to ask this, but do we have any update, like on the SROs in the schools, or are we just up in the air after that whole levy thing? And are they going back, where are they going? Like where their office is gonna be, I guess?
Yeah, so Chief, if you don't mind coming forward, I know that kind of came up last time, and there was an article in the paper, I don't know if they made any final decisions,
Well-
but it said that's something they were definitely looking at. Have you gotten any new information, Chief?
That's kind of why I'm asking. That article said something about the SROs, but I was just curious, like, what's the plan? We don't have, I don't know what the question is, but go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, Council Register, the plan is to keep our children safe, and officially, we haven't been told anything by Caldwell School District as far as what their plan is with the budget. But my plan is to keep officers in schools as long as we can until they tell us otherwise. And officially, we haven't been told what they want to do, but last week they said they were going to send me and the mayor an email, and they never sent us anything. So
Okay.
I'm still waiting, just like you are.
Okay, I know we have some concerned parents, that's why we just don't have an answer yet then.
Yes, and
Okay,
I'm concerned as well.
yeah, okay. That was it, thank you. And then the last thing I wanted to say was just, I didn't want to say this in the middle of the VRT vote, but I kind of wanted to address what Councilor Dittenber said about the promises that we made. I agree with you that our word does mean something, but at the end of the day, we have a responsibility to the community. So if we vote for something and we find out during the process that either it's not going to work for the community, we don't have the money, something has changed, then we have an obligation to change our mind. We are actually required to do what's right for the community, and that's not putting the city in a strain if it's money or changing a program that maybe isn't working, whatever it is. And that's just how I feel about that. I don't think that because we budget for something, that we are automatically obligated then to hand out that money and that people should wait to use it for those exact reasons. In saying that, I know the parking meters are a thing, and they've only been out there for a little while, but of course we're hearing I'm hearing a lot of negative comments. I know other people have heard positive things. I don't want it to go to the wayside. I think we should be keeping this discussion going because it's my understanding that the contract ends in October. Is that correct?
I believe so. Does that sound right, Taylor, in regards to the car park contract?
Mayor and council, thank you.
Up for renewal in October.
Yeah, I believe so. And Councilor Register, I believe Mark responded to your email with some information about those questions, and I believe the answer to that was that it is up for renewal every year.
So do we vote again then?
I believe there would be, because of the non-appropriation piece of those things, it would be brought forward to you again. If you're specifically asking about the fee associated with the use of that's not what you're asking about, okay.
The whole contract, like, so we vote again in October on whether or not to continue the contract?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. So I just think that between now and whenever we come to that vote again, that we do listen to the community, whether it's good or bad or whatever. I plan on going and talking to people on my own, and I hope that you do too, but I'm going to continue to just bring back feedback as I can, and right now, it's not been great. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah,
And
appreciate it.
now I'm done.
Okay, Councilor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll echo your platitudes for this wonderful room and space that we have here and the good work that was done to get us here. It's nice to have a little elbow room up here. On a serious note, I understand there was some discussion not too long ago, I don't know if you brought it up or someone else did, about changing our council meeting date again. And due to the fact that we're using a parking lot in a place that is so adjacent to one of the most prominent features of our plaza every week, and honestly, I think that we as a council should want to participate as much as possible in some of that as well. I think it might be worth considering going back to Monday as it was. And so I would suggest that you maybe put that on an agenda item for us to go back to Mondays for council meetings and give up our space back to the plaza for Tuesday nights.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because I was going to mention that last week, and I forgot, so I'm glad that you did. Yeah, Counselor Doty?
Okay.
you know.
And I forgot tonight, so I'm glad Counselor Williams brought it up. So I'm also in favor of that, at least the discussion to move it to Monday night, so.
Okay. Yeah, so what we can do is we can put that as a discussion, or maybe even maybe a discussion item originally, and then kind of get everybody's take on it and bring that back to council to, or maybe even an action item, and then it can be denied or approved that night, because it sounds like at least there's a few in favor of that. And yeah, I was going to bring that up, because yeah, as you mentioned, Tuesday night is the busiest night in downtown Caldwell. It really is. As a former business owner, Tuesday night was busier than Friday night and Saturday night. That bodes how well the farmers market is, the concerts, and so it is a busy time already. And so now that we're over here, I know it's just the 2-block difference, but it's a big difference for parking, things of that nature. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Anything else? Councilor Williams? Okay. Councilor Allgood?
Well, Counselor Williams stole my subject, so.
You're welcome.
Anyway, I would completely agree with Counselor Williams' statement there on that. This is, the competition for parking tonight is just, especially if we had something with a lot of people in attendance to discuss, it would really be a conflict, so I would be in agreement with the other counselors.
Okay. This is great. Councilor Dittenber?
Thank you. I guess I have to report on the parking something different than what Councilor Register is reporting on. The feedback that I've got on the parking has been positive. But one of the things I should probably note about this is not a subjective thing, like yes it is, no it isn't, and we're not going to be this worthless banter. Here in a few weeks, we're going to have the true numbers. And those numbers are through the Idaho State Tax Commission, because you have to quarterly file your sales tax. And we will see whether or not these businesses are really doing better or really doing worse. So this isn't just lip service about what we've heard. The public will know that the numbers will be out there. So if we're doubling down on this is a really bad thing, we better be prepared to find out that it's a really good thing. Vice versa, if we're doubling down that this is a really good thing, we better be prepared to see the numbers that it's not. So again, for the community, for those that are listening, that want to stream it out there and take a snippet and post it out there everywhere, we'll have the numbers, and it will show whether or not it's successful or not. So I look forward to seeing those numbers and the discussion in the future.
Thank you.
Oh, one more thing.
Oh, yes.
I just want to make sure that you know that here in a couple weeks, we're down to 3 weeks. We are moving the historic Rice House. It will probably be the largest thing ever to move downtown Caldwell, and you're not going to want to miss it. And if you want your name on the side of the house, I will gladly take a sponsorship to put your name on the side of the big house. The other thing is, if we're in the mood of talking about things that are historic, which are good for our community, on the 28th of June, just one day prior to moving the historic Rice House, they are removing the historic Caldwell Fountain to its new location outside the depot. So a couple of good things going on with regards to preserving the rich history of our city.
Thank you. And just to segue into that, a huge thank you to that young lady sitting next to you, Madam Clerk. She's been a huge help with that in helping getting that restored and bringing that back to its original luster, and then getting it back to more or less its original location, not the exact, but on the street again where it originated. So that's been around for well over 100 years. It was from the actually the Humane Society is where we got it from. The city did originally as a drinking fountain for dogs, horses, and people. So it was a 3-in-1 combination from back in the day. So it's kind of exciting on that. So so it's a few comments that I do have before we wrap up and adjourn. So in regards to the question that was brought up in the transaction fee, what that is, it's a fee that's incurred if people decide to use the app to pay rather than paying into the meter. So it was as Councilor Williams brought up at the last either the last meeting or meeting before, 55-cent transaction fee. As was mentioned in the emails that we had received, we were not aware of that. It was not listed specifically, I think, in the contract, but did say that there are, because these are optional fees, these are not required. It's just if you use the app, things of that nature. So it's not listed there. I have used the Park mobile app dozens of times in Boise and never noticed that they had that transaction fee. And again, it was 55 cents. We did some research, found out that Boise's was 35 cents. They were grandfathered in, is what it sounded like. So we asked the car park if they would reach out, which they did. And the company, so that's Park Mobile, that has that transaction fee. It's not through the car park. It's the online app service that does that. So they did reduce it to that grandfathered fee for us to match Boise's. So there still is that fee of 35 cents on that, but it was reduced to 35 cents in lieu of the 55 cents in that regard. But again, it's talking to them saying, well, you know, is this standard? Could we look at other app providers that do that? They said you could, but it's standard across the board. They all have a different transaction fee one way or the other. So to get that reduction, I mean, that's a pretty significant reduction. Going from the, you know, a 20-cent reduction on that from 55 cents to 35 cents. So, with just a phone call. So we're grateful for that, and that will save the people using that quite a bit of money. Family Fun Day, just a reminder, that is coming up. That is this Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. At Serenity Park, which is the one located right next to the library. So excited for that. That's a big event put on for the city. Gets a lot of kids out, and you know, there's free hot dogs for the kids and the family, different events to do. So it's a great opportunity for the city to just, you know, enhance the community and bring families down and having fun in that regards. And then the last thing that I did want to touch on is just briefly talking about some of the interaction that transpired at the last budget meeting. I met with, there's an individual employee that was present that unfortunately affected him in being there. Some of the things that were said, just being aware of what we're saying, how we're saying it in regards to employee matters. I realize it was the budget and you're talking about the position that was being proposed, but just to the council to please be aware of that and be respectful of the employees that we have. If there are issues, I understand that. I know we've had discussion offline in regards to those, and that's where those need to take place, is offline and not in a public meeting for that. I met with that employee today and apologized that I felt I could have done more to try to rein that in and focus it more on the budget and not on a specific employee. So I apologized to him in private today, and I told him I was going to do it in public as well. So I do sincerely apologize to him for what was said and that I did not do more to try to rein that in. And unfortunately, that employee did resign. In large part of what did transpire. So we will miss him greatly. He did great things for the city and wish him nothing but the best in his future endeavors. And just for all, myself included, that we can all try to do better and to respect those employees and what they do. And with that, we will stand adjourned this evening with record time. Hopefully we can continue this on in the future.